Inside the Supermax system, what the government doesn't show you. The camera slams into a pitch-black concrete hallway. A siren suddenly stops mid-alarm. A metal door slams by itself, and a trembling voice whispers, "They weren't supposed to open his door." A single question flashes in the viewer's mind. What just happened inside that Supermax cell? The quiet that isn't really quiet, asterisk asterisk. The camera fades back in. Imagine a place so silent that even your breathing sounds too loud. That's the first thing people never understand about the Supermax system. Inside these ultra-secure prisons, places like ADX Florence, Pelican Bay's SHU, and other federal isolation units, silence is not peace. Silence is pressure. Silence is control. The hallway walls are made of concrete thicker than a car. The lights never fully turn off. And every footstep echoes like it doesn't belong to a human. But behind that silence, something else is always waiting. A tiny sound, a tap, a low whisper, a shuffle on the floor behind a steel door. Guards call these places secure housing units. But the inmates call them something else. The box. A place built to hide people the world never hears from again. And today, we're stepping inside. The first walk down. A guard pushes a large steel cart down the hallway. 3 meal trays. 2 medical request slips. 1 envelope marked admin only. He doesn't know who's watching him. Inside the cells, men sit alone for 22 to 23 hours a day. Some read. Some pace. Some stare at the wall like they can see something the rest of us can't. But one thing is the same. No one talks first. Everyone waits. The camera follows the guard's boots as he stops at cell 312. He hesitates. He looks at the door window. Nothing. Just darkness inside. He slides the tray through the slot, and something taps back from the other side. Just one tap. Too soft to be angry. Too deliberate to be random. The guard freezes. He checks the clipboard. 312. No contact allowed. So who tapped? The camera zooms out. We see the whole tier from above. 40 cells. 40 doors. 40 people the government rarely shows you. People living in small concrete rooms, with a bed, a toilet, a slot, and a window too narrow to see the sky. Outside, the world moves fast. Inside, time barely moves at all. And that's when the narrator says, Supermax wasn't just built to hold people, it was built to erase them. This is the part the government doesn't show. Not the noise. Not the silence. Not the pressure inside every single cell. Just the outside. Just the walls. Just what's easier to explain. But behind those walls, the truth is deeper and much darker. What a day really looks like. The day starts long before the sun rises. At 5 a.m., a bright white light flashes through every cell window. Not sunlight, a fluorescent bulb powerful enough to wake anyone instantly. Inside the cells, men stretch, blink, and prepare for another day. That looks exactly like the day before. The routine is strict. Breakfast delivered through a metal slot. Shower time, 3 days a week, alone, monitored. Recreation, 1 hour in a small concrete yard, no contact. No group meals. No open yard. No voices unless approved. Every movement is planned. Every rule is written. Every moment is monitored. But there is one thing no policy paper explains. What it feels like to live inside those rules. The camera moves into one cell. A man sits on his concrete bed. He holds a small pencil. He writes one sentence repeatedly. Another day, keep going. Because in a Supermax facility, your biggest battle isn't with other people. Your biggest battle is with time. Your own mind. Your own thoughts. Inside the Supermax system, every hour feels heavy, like the walls are pushing closer, even though they never move. The camera glides across the cell. It's small, about the size of a regular parking space. A concrete bed. A steel toilet. A desk that's part of the wall. A narrow window that lets in light but never shows the world. The man sits with his pencil, tapping it against his leg. Not out of boredom, but to prove to himself that the day is real. Because when every day looks the same, Your mind starts to play tricks on you. He hears footsteps outside his door. A guard checks the window. Recreation. Let's go. The inmate stands. Slow. Practice makes perfect. His hands slide out through the slot. Handcuffs first. Then shackles for the ankles. 2 guards. 1 camera. No talking. The door opens with a robotic hum. He steps into the hallway. A straight tunnel of concrete and bright lights. This is the part no documentary shows fully. In Supermax, freedom means walking 12 steps. From your cell to a small concrete yard. And even that requires chains. The camera follows him to the recreation area. It's a high-walled, empty box with a grated ceiling. Sunlight trickles through the metal like broken lines. He looks up for a moment. That's the closest thing to outside he'll get today. Or this week. Maybe this month. He walks in circles. Slow at first. Faster. Then slower again. This is his world. A small room with air. But not much else. But then, he hears something. A whisper. Not from the guards. Not from the hallway. From the next recreation cage to the right. A low voice. You good? The inmate doesn't respond. Talking between cells isn't allowed. It can get you written up. It can cut your rec time. Can be the difference between 1 hour outside and 0. But the whisper continues. You heard what happened last night? They opened the wrong door. Silence. The inmate stops walking. The guards don't seem to hear it. The voice repeats even quieter. They opened 312. The camera zooms in on the inmate's face. Not fear. Not confusion. Just one expression. Because everyone in the Supermax unit knows that 312 is not a door you open by accident. And if it opened, the question isn't what happened. The real question is, who ordered it? The inmate lowers his head slightly. He keeps walking, and the camera slowly fades to the next part of the day. The meal. The food they never show, asterisk asterisk. Lunchtime in a Supermax unit doesn't look like a cafeteria. There is no line, no noise, no conversation. Just trays sliding into dark rooms like messages nobody reads. A guard pushes the cart again. The same guard from the morning. He stops at the same cell, 312. He hesitates. A half-second pause. Then he slips the tray through the slot and moves on. The camera moves back to our inmate's cell. His tray sits on the floor beside the door. A square of meat. A scoop of rice. A small milk carton. It's not about taste. It's about calories. Enough to keep you alive. Not enough to make you comfortable. He sits on the floor with his back against the wall. He eats in silence. But halfway through his meal, he freezes. Because from the hallway, a loud metal bang hits the air. Not a tray. Not a door. Something heavier. A voice yells, "Back on your walls." Guards sprint past the camera. Keys jingling. Boots slamming concrete. Something has changed. Something serious. The camera cuts to black, and then a single muffled shout echoes through the speakers. He's not supposed to be out of his cell. Someone is loose. And it might be connected to 312. The incident no one talks about, asterisk asterisk. The camera fades back in. The hallway is no longer quiet. Guards rush in 2 directions at once. Radio calls overlapping, boots pounding, keys clattering against their belts. Inside his cell, the inmate stands still, one hand on the wall, the other clenched around nothing. He listens carefully. A voice on the radio cracks through. Unit C lockdown. Repeat, full lockdown. Possible breach. The inmate's breathing slows. A breach in a Supermax isn't like a regular prison. It doesn't mean someone escaped outside. It means someone escaped inside. And that's even worse. The camera follows a team of officers. As they reach the end of the hallway, one guard whispers, "Who opened his door?" Another replies, "Nobody's saying. Check the logs." The camera cuts to a digital tablet, showing the electronic record. Cell 312, opened, 2:16 a.m. Authorized by. The name is missing. Just a blank space. That's not supposed to be possible. Electronic logs don't forget. Someone made them forget. A senior officer steps forward, face tight, jaw locked. Find him. Now. Inside the cell block. The camera returns to the inmate's cell. He sits on the edge of the bed, hands resting on his knees. He hears footsteps again. But this time, they're slower, heavier, controlled. A team of heavily armored officers appears outside his door. One looks through the window. Stay still until we clear the tier. The inmate nods once. Not out of fear. Out of experience. He knows this routine too well. The officers move past. But then, a faint scraping sound echoes from somewhere deeper in the block. Metal against concrete. Slow. Dragging. Everyone stops moving. The officer closest to the door whispers. That's coming from 312. The camera pans down the hallway. Cold light flickers. Dust floats in the air. At the very end of the corridor, a shadow shifts. It's small, barely visible, but moving. The officers lift their shields. One speaks into his radio. We got movement. Tier 3. Lock it down. Now. The lights flicker again. Push. 3 times. That's when the camera catches a detail nobody was supposed to see. The door to cell 312 isn't fully closed. It's cracked open. Just an inch. But enough to show that something pushed it from the inside. The red emergency strip light glows across its edge. A whisper travels across the hallway. He got out again. The meaning of a cracked door. The camera slowly zooms toward the half-open door. In a Supermax prison, doors weigh hundreds of pounds. They lock with electronic bolts. They require authorization from the control unit. They cannot be opened manually from the inside. Which means, if a door like 312 is open, even a tiny amount, the system failed. Or someone made sure it failed. Inside the narrow opening, only darkness shows. But something moves inside it. A faint breath. A slow step. A quiet shift of weight. The officers tighten formation. The inmate inside his cell leans closer to the door window, eyes focused, trying to understand what's unfolding. And then, bang, the cracked door slams all the way shut, as if someone pulled it hard from the inside. Every guard jumps. The hallway falls silent. The radios crackle. And one officer whispers the line that sets up the entire next chapter. Check the cameras. If he's not inside that cell, we've got a problem bigger than a breach. The camera that shouldn't have failed, asterisk asterisk. The camera fades back in with a low hum. A group of officers gather around a control room monitor. A screen divided into tiny squares, each one showing a live feed from inside the Supermax unit. But one square is completely black. Camera 312, no signal. A tech officer taps the monitor. The screen doesn't flicker, doesn't glitch, doesn't try to reconnect. It's just gone. And this is the part the government rarely explains. Supermax cameras are built to survive almost anything. Power outages, tampering, even riots. So when a camera fails, it's never an accident. The supervising officer leans forward. When did it go offline? The tech scrolls through the system logs. 2:15 a.m. Another officer steps closer. That's 1 minute before the door opened. A silence settles in the room. A heavy, cold silence. Because if the camera went dark just before the door unlocked, it means someone timed it. Someone coordinated it. Someone who had access to both the camera system and the electronic door controls. The tech zooms in on the log again. Authorized by. No name. No code. Just blank space. The supervising officer exhales sharply. This wasn't a malfunction. This was planned. Back in the cell block. Meanwhile, the inmate sits in his cell, eyes locked on the door window. The lights flicker again. The guards return to the hallway. Shields raised. Puns ready. Eyes scanning every corner. A senior officer stops in front of the inmate's door. Step back. The inmate steps away from the door, just as the officers move past. But then, something changes. Something small. Something easy to miss. The inmate tilts his head. Listens. The hallway grows quiet again. Too quiet. One of the guards whispers, "I don't hear him." Another replies, "Check the vents." The inmate's eyes widen just a little. The camera pans up to the ceiling. A narrow ventilation grate. Bolted. Impossible to squeeze through. Impossible for most people. But the officers know one thing. The man in 312 isn't like most people. He's someone with a long history of making impossible things happen. The supervising guard gives the order. Thermal scan. Now. A portable scanner is raised. A beam of blue light washes across the door to 312, up the walls, across the ceiling, and finally into the corner ventilation duct. The scanner beeps. Twice. Then flashes red. Heat signature detected. The officers snap their weapons up. The supervising officer whispers, "He's above us." The silent move. Every guard freezes. The inmate inside his cell leans even closer to the door window, watching the reflection of movement in the hallway. A scraping sound vibrates through the ceiling. Slow, careful, controlled. The supervising officer lowers his voice. He's climbing the vent system. Another guard shakes his head. That's impossible. The screws alone. He didn't use the screws. The camera zooms in on the vent grate. Two of the metal bars are bent outward. Not snapped, not cut, but bent, as if someone pushed through using pure strength, or had been loosening them over months. The supervising officer stares at the opening. Seal every exit. He can't reach the main shafts. The tech's voice crackles through the radio. "Sir, he already has." All the officers turn at once. The tech continues. He's moving fast, heading toward the service corridor. The supervising officer tightens his grip on his radio. "How big is the opening?" The tech answers. "Too small for a normal man." But he isn't normal. The part nobody expects. The inmate closes his eyes for a moment. He knows this feeling. He knows this tension. He knows that when a Supermax inmate breaks protocol, even by an inch, everyone in the unit feels the ripple. But when someone breaks the system, that creates a shockwave. And right now, a shockwave is shaking every hallway, every cell, every guard post inside this prison. Because someone from 3A12 is not where he is supposed to be. He is above them, in the vents, in the dark, and moving. As the officers regroup, a deep siren echoes through the entire facility. Critical breach. Lockdown level 4. This isn't a drill. This is something bigger. Something the government doesn't show. Something they don't want to explain. The service corridor they hide from the public, asterisk asterisk. The camera fades back in under flickering red emergency lights. Alarms echo through the concrete tunnels. A mechanical voice repeats over the speakers. Level 4 lockdown initiated. All personnel hold position. The Supermax facility shifts from strict order to something colder, sharper, more dangerous. Every iron door slams shut. Every hallway seals. Every guard station locks behind bulletproof glass. But one part of the prison, the one almost no civilian ever sees, isn't locked yet. The service corridor. This long, hidden passage runs behind the walls of the cell blocks. It's a narrow maintenance hallway. No windows, no cameras, no alarms. Just old metal pipes and industrial wiring. And that's where they believe 312 is heading. The map no one talks about. Inside the control room, the supervising officer pulls up a blueprint. The camera zooms in on the screen. Behind every cell tier, there's a thin service spine, meant for maintenance crews and emergency repairs. But to someone with enough patience, someone with enough time to study the sound of guard steps, someone who listens to vibrations in the walls, it can become a hidden path. The officer traces a line on the blueprint. He'll follow this route, he says. He knows the vents lead here. A younger guard looks confused. But how? They don't get maps. The supervising officer answers quietly. They don't need maps. They have time. The camera cuts back to the inmate in his cell. He listens carefully, feet slightly apart, hands relaxed, breathing slow. He knows the sound patterns too. The quiet whispers in the vents. The vibration in the walls. The scrape of metal shifting. He's heard it for months. But today, it's louder. Closer. Someone is moving through that hidden corridor. Someone who shouldn't be. The service corridor. The camera now takes us inside it. A narrow tunnel behind the cell block. Pipes hiss with steam. Rust flakes off the walls. The floor is coated in dust that hasn't been disturbed in years. For now, footprints trail through it. Fresh footprints. Not from guards. Not from staff. From a single person moving with purpose. The flashlight beam of a responding officer sweeps across the corridor. He speaks into the radio. I have visual on the prints. He's heading north fast. Another officer replies. Cut him off at the junction. We can trap him. But the tech's voice interrupts. Sir, he's already past the junction. The supervising officer stiffens. How? We sealed every door. Inside the cell block, the inmate looks up again. His eyes lock onto the vent above him. Another faint sound. Not random. Not echo. A signal. A warning. The inmate steps closer to the wall. Something is happening in that corridor. Something only the people stuck inside this place can sense. The camera shifts back into the service corridor. And that's when we hear it. A sudden metallic clang. But, not a door. Not a pipe. A vent cover hitting the floor. The officer's flashlight beam swings left. The vent grate lies at his feet. He slowly raises the light upward, toward the opening in the wall. And his voice trembles. He's above me. The move that shouldn't be possible. The officers brace themselves. Shields up. Weapons ready. Eyes fixed on the dark vent opening above. A scuffle echoes inside the duct. Scraping. Movement like someone crawling through a too tight space. An officer whispers. How is he fitting through that? The supervising officer answers. He's been working on those vents for years. The scratching stops. Everything goes silent. The officers look up. The flashlight beam shaking slightly. Then they hear it. A breath. Slow. Controlled. Coming from right above them. The supervising officer grabs his radio. He's using the duct network to stay ahead of us. We need him boxed in. Shut down the air system. The tech responds. Working on it. But if we seal the vents, he could get trapped in there. The supervising officer clenches his jaw. That's the point. The part the government doesn't admit. The inmate inside his cell closes his eyes. He knows what sealing the vents means. Oxygen drops. Airflow slows. A person inside the ducts can't breathe for long. Heat builds up. Panic happens fast. Supermax ventilation systems weren't designed for people to move through them. But someone is. And now the facility is preparing to suffocate that space. To force him out. The inmate presses his hand to the wall. He can feel the vibration increasing, the deep humming, as the air system prepares to shift. He whispers, barely audible. They're going to choke the vent. And above him, in the narrow duct, a man from 312 crawls deeper into the darkness. As the airflow begins to die, the officers prepare for the final move. But what happens next is something even they didn't expect. The air goes dead, asterisk asterisk. The scene opens with a deep mechanical rumble. Inside the walls of the Supermax, the ventilation system begins shutting down. One section at a time. Fans slow. The hum fades. Airflow drops. A cold, metallic voice echoes over the facility speakers. Ventilation, Section A offline. A second announcement follows. Ventilation, Section B offline. Then the final one. Ventilation, Section C offline. Inside the duct, 312 stops moving. The air becomes still. Not warm, not cold, just dead. He angles his head, listening to the silence around him. He knows exactly what this means. He's running out of time. So are the guards. And so is everyone in this block. The cell block reacts. The inmate in his cell feels it instantly. The air changes. Not much. Just enough for someone locked inside a concrete box to sense it. The lights flicker. The walls vibrate. A faint whisper of dust falls from the ceiling vent. He steps toward the door and listens. Boots rush up and down the hallway. Orders echo through the intercom. Cooling fans shut off one by one. The inmate grips the edge of the small desk built into the wall. He knows the system too well. When the air shuts down, the temperature rises quickly. Within minutes, every cell will feel like a sealed car under the sun. He whispers again. They're forcing him down. Inside the service duct. The camera shifts to 312 inside the duct. It's tight. Too tight for a normal person to crawl through. But he's squeezing through, arms dragging, knees scraping metal, breathing slowly to conserve air. His face is calm, focused, almost calculating. He reaches a split in the duct. Left or right? He chooses right. Not by luck. By memory. Because he's been learning this building. Through sound. For a long time. He pushes forward. Until he hears something ahead. A buzz. A vibration. A clue. A warning. He pauses, presses his ear against the metal, and hears muffled voices. Officers. Waiting at the next vent opening. The trap. He turns back. The other direction. But now the ventilation system is almost completely off. His breathing is shallow. The camera pulls in close to show the sweat on his face. He's losing air. But he keeps moving. The guards plan. Inside the control room, the supervising officer watches a thermal scan. A red dot crawls across the blueprint. Slow. Stubborn. Not stopping. A younger guard asks, "Sir, why doesn't he just give up?" The supervising officer doesn't look away from the screen. Because for him, this isn't an escape attempt. Then what is it? The officer answers. A message. Everyone in the room falls silent. The possibility they feared. Another officer unlocks a separate screen. It shows a map of the electrical subcorridor. A place even more hidden than the service duct. The tech officer speaks carefully. He's heading toward the main access hatch. The supervising officer's eyes widen. The younger guard asks, "What's at the access hatch?" The supervising officer replies, "A manual override." The guard frowns. Override for what? The supervising officer turns to him. His voice low. Serious. Doors. The guard blinks. You mean? Yes. Every door in the entire unit. The camera cuts to the hallway. The doors lining both sides like massive steel teeth. Behind them are dozens of men. Who stay separated. For the safety of everyone inside the prison. If the hatch is reached, if the override is activated, the consequences would be impossible to control. The inmate understands. Back in his cell, the inmate lifts his head. He hears something. Not boots. Not alarms. A vibration in the wall. Different from before. He recognizes it. The duct system is shifting. The man in 312 is no longer just hiding. He's heading toward something important. Toward something dangerous. The inmate whispers, "Don't do it." But he knows the truth. 312 is not doing this for freedom. He's doing this to prove a point. A point that might put everyone at risk. Inside the walls. The camera zooms back into the duct. 312 reaches a wider section. He drops down into a steel chamber. The crossroads of the entire ventilation grid. A dim red light glows on the wall. Next to it, a metal hatch with a warning sign. Authorized person only. Through the tiny mesh grate in the center of the hatch, a faint blinking light shines. Override panel locked. System ready. He reaches for it. Breathing shallow. Sweat running down his face. Air nearly gone. He places one hand on the hatch handle, and everything stops. Because from behind him, deep inside the duct, a loud metallic click echoes. Not from the hatch. From something else. Someone else. The camera whips around. A beam of light hits the metal. A guard. Inside the duct. Crawling toward him. The chase. The confrontation. The truth behind 312's plan. The ducts turn into a hunt, asterisk. The camera fades in. A tight metal tunnel stretches into darkness. Dust floats in the beam of a flashlight. Everything is silent. Until a voice echoes softly. "Stop right there." The guard's breathing is heavy, echoing through the metal duct. He crawls slowly, one arm forward, one arm pulling himself deeper. His flashlight beam shakes as it catches the silhouette of 312, kneeling in front of the hatch. 312 doesn't move. He just listens. Another officer's voice crackles over the guard's radio. Ventilation is fully offline. Oxygen dropping. Get him out of there before he passes out. The guard crawls closer. Turn around. We don't want this to get worse. 312 finally shifts. Not fast. Not threatening. He simply turns his head enough for the light to reveal the side of his face. His expression is calm. Too calm. He whispers, "You think I came this far? To stop?" The guard tightens his grip on the duct floor. 312 speaks again, voice steady. "I'm not doing this to escape. I need them to listen." The guard blinks. "Listen to what?" 312 taps the hatch once with his knuckle, a soft metallic sound that echoes down the duct. To what this place has become. The control room reacts. The supervising officer watches the thermal map closely. He sees two red dots now, one motionless, 312, and one creeping closer, the guard. The second officer rushes in. "Sir, if he reaches that hatch." "I know." The supervising officer rubs his forehead, stressed. Another guard speaks up. "We shut down the vents. He can't stay up there long." But the supervisor answers quietly. "That's what I'm worried about." Everyone turns toward him. He continues. "If he collapses in the vents, we'll have to cut through 20 feet of steel just to reach him." The room goes still. Because the truth is, a person losing consciousness inside the ducts is a nightmare scenario. Dangerous for the inmate. Dangerous for the officers. Dangerous for the structural system. The supervising officer mutters, "This can't end in the ducts. We need him to come down." The guard and 312 face each other. The guard finally reaches a point, just a few feet behind 312. He keeps his voice low, calm. "You're losing air. If you pass out, nobody wins." 312 breathes slowly, steady, controlled, almost like he trained himself to stay calm in places without oxygen. He taps the hatch again. "Do you know what this opens?" The guard swallows. "The doors." 312 nods. "And you know what happens if the doors open at the wrong time." The guard speaks carefully. "Just, people get hurt." 312's voice drops. "That's why I'm not opening it." The guard pauses. "Then what are you doing?" 312 presses his palm flat against the metal hatch. The camera zooms in on his fingers. They tremble slightly, a sign the air is thinning. He whispers, "I'm showing them how easy it was for me to get this close." The guard's eyes widen slightly. 312 continues, "This place isn't as secure as they claim. Not for us. Not for you. Not for anyone." He taps the metal once more. "If I can reach this hatch, someone else can too. Someone who actually wants to open it." The guard freezes. Because he understands the message. This is not rebellion. Not an escape. Not an attack. It is a warning. A demonstration. The cell block feels the shift. Inside his cell, the inmate presses his hand to the wall. He can feel the temperature rising. The airflow is almost gone. His breathing becomes slower. He murmurs. He's not trying to run. He's trying to prove something. The hallways echo with the muffled sound of guards. Coordinating, moving, searching. But there's a tension now. A hesitation. Because they're starting to understand that 312 didn't climb into the ducts to break free from the prison. He climbed into the ducts to break the illusion that the prison is flawless. The moment the air returns, suddenly, a deep mechanical boom vibrates through the entire block. Fans whir. Air circulates. The vents roar back to life. The inmate in his cell lets out the breath he'd been holding. Across the prison, cool air rushes through the ducts, pushing dust in all directions. But inside the service duct, the guard sees something that stuns him. 312 doesn't crawl away, doesn't run. doesn't fight. He simply lowers his head and sits. Hands open. Shoulders calm. Breathing slowly. Not defeated. Not scared. Just done. He whispers. Now they know. The guard raises his radio. I have eyes on him. He's cooperating. The supervising officer exhales in relief. Good. Bring him down. Carefully. But as the guard begins helping 312 turn around in the duct, a question forms. If he only wanted to send a message, what was he warning them about? The warning behind the walls, asterisk asterisk. The scene opens inside the narrow ventilation duct. 312 slowly crawls back toward the guard, his movements controlled, not rushed, as if every inch of the metal tunnel has a purpose. The guard supports his arm gently to guide him. No struggle. No resistance. Just a quiet acceptance. When they reach the vent opening, 2 more officers help pull 312 down into the service corridor. The camera follows him as his feet touch the floor. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't look afraid. He looks tired, but his eyes stay sharp, focused on something even the officers can't see. The supervising officer steps forward. Why did you do it? His voice is steady, but tense. 312 lifts his head slowly. Because you aren't ready. The control room demands answers. Back in the control room, the staff gather to watch the live feed. Everyone waits for the answer. The supervising officer repeats. Ready for what? 312 takes a slow breath. For what's coming, he says. The room goes silent. The inmate in his cell listens. The inmate leans closer to his door window. He hears the voices echoing faintly from the corridor. He hears the shift in tone. Not fear. Not anger. Concern. Real concern. He closes his eyes. He's lived long enough inside these walls to know when something important is happening. And this feels different. The message 312 reveals. 312 sits on the floor of the service corridor, leaning against the wall. Officers stand around him, alert but calm. He speaks clearly, slowly. You think these walls protect you. You think the systems can't fail. He taps the metal pipe beside him. This place is built on routines. You follow them. We follow them. Same times. Same schedules. Same routes. He looks up. And someone has been watching. The supervising officer frowns. Someone, who? 312's eyes move toward the ceiling duct. He crawled out of. Not me. Someone else. They've been testing the system for months. The supervising officer stiffens. What tests? 312 answers. The kind you didn't notice because you thought only inmates were paying attention. He continues. Doors unlocking half a second late. Lights flickering at the same exact time every week. A camera going offline for a minute and coming back. The guard beside him swallows hard. Those weren't random? 312 nods. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't bad wiring. It was someone seeing how far they could push before someone in this uniform noticed. The supervising officer steps back slightly. Why didn't you report this? 312 looks him in the eyes. I just did. The prison shifts from panic to fear. The camera shows different parts of the prison. Guards moving faster. Tech staff checking wires. Officers locking every utility door twice. Radios buzzing nonstop. The inmate inside his cell listens to everything. He whispers. That's why he went into the vents. Not for himself. For the whole unit. He sits on the edge of his bed, thinking about the possibility 312 just revealed. Someone, not an inmate, might be manipulating the systems. Someone who understood the building's weak points. Someone who might be planning something far more dangerous. The supervising officer's realization. The supervising officer crouches down beside 312. So you climbed through the ducts to show us how unsafe this place has become. 312 nods once. You won't fix a problem if you don't believe it exists. Another officer mutters. Why risk your life for that? 312 answers quietly. I've been in here long enough to know what happens when systems fail. People get hurt. Staff and inmates. He pauses. And someone is getting ready to make that failure happen. The supervising officer stands. Who? 312 doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he turns his head toward the camera, the one broadcasting the scene to the control room. His voice lowers. You already know who. The supervising officer freezes. Because he does know. There's someone on staff with enough access to disable cameras, open doors, and hide their footprints. Someone they've suspected, but never had proof against. Until now. The cell block goes still. The inmate in his cell feels the tension rise across the entire tier. No talking. No footsteps. Just an eerie stillness. Everyone inside the Supermax can tell. Something important just shifted, like a puzzle piece finally falling into place. The inmate whispers. So it wasn't about escape. It was about exposure. He sits back, hands resting together. For the first time in a long time, he realizes the danger isn't just coming from other inmates. It might be coming from the people who walk the hallways with keys and radios. The supervising officer gives an order. The supervising officer turns to his team. Get him out of the corridor. Take him to medical. And lock down every access panel in this building. Double guards on every junction. Then he says something no one expected to hear today. We're dealing with an internal breach. Someone on staff. The officers look at each other. Nervous, unsure, shaken. 312 closes his eyes. Exhausted from the climb, from the heat, from the lack of oxygen. He mutters one last line. As they help him to his feet. I warned you. Now you need to find who was watching me. Before they make their move. The camera slowly pulls back. The lights hum. The inmates stay silent. And the truth behind 312's message begins to unfold. The internal threat, ***. The camera opens on a high-security briefing room inside the Supermax. A group of senior officers, tech specialists, and administrators gather around a long metal table. Papers are spread everywhere. Blueprints. Security logs. Door access reports. A silence heavier than the walls fills the room. The supervising officer stands at the front. We've been looking in the wrong direction, he says. He points to the screen behind him. On it a timeline flashes, highlighting every flicker, malfunction, and mysterious door event from the past 6 months. These weren't glitches. They were tests. A tech expert steps forward, and they knew exactly when to try each one. Shift changes, camera maintenance windows, and times when short staffing left gaps in monitoring. Another officer whispers, so someone inside our own system has been poking at the prison? The supervising officer nods. Someone with tech knowledge, full access, and enough confidence to push the limits. He zooms in on the logs. One name appears repeatedly, not in red, but highlighted in yellow. Officer Daniels, Maintenance and Systems. A hush falls across the room, because Daniels has been with the facility for years. Trusted, respected, quiet. A man who knew every bolt and panel of the Supermax. And yet, he's the only person who could have shut down the camera. 1 minute before cell 312 opened. The supervising officer speaks again. Bring him in quietly. The officers nod and move swiftly. But by the time they reach his workshop, Daniels is gone. The man who disappeared inside the prison, ***. The camera follows 2 officers as they push open the maintenance room door. The lights flicker. Tools lie scattered across the floor. A half-open air vent sits on the far wall. The screws loosened, the panel nudged aside. A coffee mug sits on the workbench, steam still rising from it. He left only seconds ago. One officer whispers, he's using the same routes 312 used. The supervising officer arrives moments later. He takes one long look at the vent. Then he turns to his team. He's not escaping the prison. He's hiding inside it. A cold realization settles over everyone. The hunter has become the one hiding. And now the entire facility is a maze, designed to protect him. What no one expected to find, asterisk asterisk. Inside his cell, the inmate watches officers rush past again. But this time, there's something different. They're not only searching for an inmate, they're searching for one of their own. He sits quietly, thinking about what 312 said earlier. Someone has been watching. The inmate whispers. So this wasn't just a warning. It was a reveal. Meanwhile, inside the narrow spaces of the Supermax, the service corridors, the wiring channels, the camera follows the trail Daniels left behind. A dropped flashlight, a torn piece of uniform fabric, a set of scratched initials on the inner wall, a panel left half open. He knew these spaces better than anyone. Officers move cautiously, sweating, listening for movement. Every echo sounds like footsteps. Every vibration feels like a signal. But Daniel stays ahead, invisible in the shadows. He's not running away. He's hiding something. And then they find it. The officers step into a small sub-basement room, rarely used by anyone outside maintenance. Inside, on a metal table lit by a single bulb, sits a large binder, full of sketches. Not drawings. Blueprints. Blueprints of the entire facility. Every duct, every vent, every emergency override. Some pages are marked with red circles, others with dates. Someone had been studying vulnerabilities. Not just a crack in the system, an entire map of weaknesses. The supervising officer flips through the pages and whispers. He wasn't testing the system. He was planning something. The next page reads, Phase 1, camera blackouts. Phase 2, door malfunctions. Phase 3. The rest of the page is torn out. The truth they didn't want to accept, asterisk asterisk. The camera returns to the cell block. Officers move faster now. Communication becomes urgent. The lockdown deepens. The inmate in his cell feels the shift, the change in how the guards talk, how they walk, how they respond. This isn't routine anymore. This is fear. Because the truth is simple. They never imagined the real threat would come from inside the staff. The inmate whispers. 312 wasn't the danger. He was the alarm. What this story really means, asterisk asterisk. The camera pulls back. Slow. Cinematic. We see the entire Supermax facility. From above, the maze of concrete walls, the narrow corridors, the hidden ducts, the steel doors, the towers watching every movement. But the narration shifts. Supermax prisons were designed to control the most dangerous people. But sometimes the system forgets to watch itself. 312 sits in a medical room now, breathing normally, wrist restraints on, head down. He didn't escape. He didn't attack. He didn't break the system. He exposed it. Because behind all the concrete, all the cameras, all the controls, one truth remains. A prison is only as strong as the people who run it. And today, the system learned that something, or someone, inside its own walls, was preparing to use its weaknesses, not to free inmates, not to destroy the prison, but for a purpose, still unknown. The supervising officer stares at the torn blueprint page. His voice echoes as the screen darkens. We found Phase 1. We saw Phase 2. But we don't know what Phase 3 is, or when it starts. The camera cuts to black. A long silence. Then one final line fades in. Inside the Supermax system, the real danger isn't always behind the steel doors.